Welcome back to Top Shelf EDU. I'm your host, Aaron Lee. Today, I'm joined by Lindsay Parker, who is the Associate Director of International Enrollment for Duke Kunshan University. Thanks for joining me, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right. So I guess to start out, can you introduce Duke Kunshan University? I believe it's DKU, the abbreviation, and what makes it stand out from other top universities?
Yes, so Duke Kunshan University is Duke University's new joint venture university in China. And essentially, what we're offering through this university is a 4-year liberal arts and sciences undergraduate bachelor's degree program where our students study both in China and in the US and graduate with 2 degrees. And one of them is that US top 10 degree from Duke University.
And what would some of your most popular and possibly unique programs that you offer at DKU that students might not know about?
So we definitely have a wide range of offerings, and they tend to be hybrid majors that are interdisciplinary. But since we have a radically internationally diverse student population, one of my favorites is it was our political economy major that is now uh, politics, economics, and philosophy. And so this one is going to attract essentially future diplomats who want to be involved in collaborative decision making across borders in high levels of government, diplomacy, international public policy, and so on. We also have some popular programs in data science, global health, environmental sciences, and just much more.
Hey, that sounds really interesting, especially for those students because you will be studying in two different countries. I would suspect you would have to, I don't want to say know each language, but possibly start to learn each language while you are over in China. So that's going to be really important for those as well. Can you talk about, is it when you're over um, at the university, do you have to know any Mandarin or Cantonese, or is everything taught in English? How does that kind of set students up?
Our international students are coming in from over 70 different countries, and they do not need to know a single word of Mandarin when they arrive on campus. The full program is taught in English to all of our students, but because it's in China, they will be required to learn a minimum of 2 years of Mandarin language. So some of them will start from ni hao and yi, er, san, si, and just go from there. And then others will come in at various stages of already having started learning Mandarin and just level up from there to the point where they'll all be graduating with at least conversational proficiency and some of them full fluency.
So when we're looking at a type of student that would thrive at Duke Kunshan University, what type of student does that look like? Who would thrive and who might find it a little bit challenging?
Yeah, so our academic profile looks very much like Duke University's academic profile in terms of academic readiness. So as a baseline, academically, these are students who really thrive in a challenging curriculum and are ready to take that to the next level. But above and beyond what you might see as the typical Duke student profile, our students tend to be a little bit more adventurous, as you might imagine, because they graduate with their cap and gown in May, and then they get on planes to fly to China in August. So they tend to be craving that international diversity of perspective, the adventurous lifestyle of being able to travel internationally during their holiday breaks and see a lot of places around the world and take advantage of China's robust high speed rail system and just easy and affordable transportation. Um, and they're also very multifaceted quirky and funny and very welcoming and inclusive because none of them are bringing their friend crew from back home. They're all starting from scratch. And so by default, they just tend to be very, very friendly and welcoming from day one.
That sounds great. And I would suspect that they become very close with the people that they go to school with in terms of almost like a small family.
Yes, they're going through this shared experience of culture shock together. And so for our international students, they're dealing with the culture shock of moving to China and dealing with language barriers and new and incredible flavors and just everything that comes along with that. But then our domestic Chinese students, who make up over half of our student population, they too undergo a kind of culture shock because they have to acclimate to this university where things are taught in English, where it's a more American style of education and student support. And they're really pushed to learn how to adopt a few different types of behaviors in the classroom than what may have been rewarded in their traditional Chinese education up through high school graduation. And so there's a bit of an acclimation process for them as well. So everybody's dealing with something and they get to have that shared experience.
Yeah, that sounds so interesting and so unique. Now, you talked about the student experience a little bit. With if an international student moves over there, would they be rooming with another international student? Would they be, living with somebody from China? How does that look in terms of the student experience in the classroom? What is the type of instruction? Is it lectures? Is it experiential learning? Is there research opportunities? Can you get into a little bit of that for us?
Yes. So in the first year, we typically pair one international student with one Chinese student as roommates in a double room. And that is one of the many ways that we kind of give a little helping hand to the cross-cultural fusion straight away. And there are just some practical elements of having a native, speaker of Mandarin and someone who understands the cultural norms, just an elbow's length away. So in the first year, Chinese roommate. From second year on, our students can request anyone they like as a roommate, so they can buddy up with a friend no matter where their friend is from. In the classroom, our courses are being taught by professors from about 45 different countries around the world. And as you can imagine, that comes along with a wide variety of teaching styles. So some of them are going to be more lecture based. Some of them are going to be much more discussion based. We try and integrate hands on experiential components in all of them. And then there are the additional elements of field trips, lab work, research, and so on. So by the end of the program, all of our students will have done at least one research assistantship, at least one internship, and also a 2-year-ish capstone project that they can show off as a completed work.
That's really good to know for any students that are interested in that. It's really important to get that hands-on skills, not only if you want to go on to grad school, but also once you start your career, those are the skills and those are the experiences that, your hiring committee are going to be looking for. So when you're able to speak about those and, talk about all the great things that you've done, it's really going to put you in a great place. So thank you for that. Now, is because it's over in China, but it's Duke University, are all the students only, studying in China? Is there a part where they come back to Duke at all? And if so, can you kind of talk about how that kind of works?
Yes. So while technically, if they want, they can do all 4 years in China. We have a flagship study away program, which is our study away at Duke in North Carolina. So over 90% of our students right now are opting into the study away at Duke semester, which would be either one fall semester or one spring semester of the junior year spent on campus in North Carolina. Those who want more time at Duke can add on summer terms as well. So it is possible to do more than just one semester. And while at Duke, they stay um, either in Duke's campus housing or nearby. They take Duke classes face to face. They have opportunities to get involved in research at Duke, or even at Duke's satellite campuses, like the Marine Lab in Beaufort for marine biology hands on experiences, and integrate with the Duke community, both in terms of students and faculty. So they really get as much of that full Duke experience as is possible in a single term or a few summer terms and get the best of both worlds, basically.
That sounds so interesting and so great. Now, if students are interested in applying to Duke Kunshan University, how do they do that? Is it through, like, would they be applying to Duke through the Common App, or is there a separate application where you would apply through the university in China? How does that work if students are looking at actually applying?
We give them two options. The first option is that if they go on the Common App and put in Duke Kunshan, there is a free Common application that they can do that's very straightforward. But also, if you have students that are already applying to Duke University in North Carolina, they're already paying Duke's application fee, eventually they'll come to a question that asks them, would you also like to be considered for admission at Duke Kunshan University in China? And typically we link to our little 5-minute YouTube video so they can see what this is all about. And if they select yes to that question, then they actually get like a two-in-one application. They would get admissions considerations from Duke and from Duke Kunshan University independently. And so it does not help or hurt their application to Duke. It does not help or hurt their application to Duke Kunshan to do it that way. They basically just get a bonus application within the one that they've already started with Duke.
Hey, that's really good to know. Now, we know that when you're applying to universities in the US, as in Duke, it's a holistic application. When you're applying to Duke Kunshan University, is it the same type of application or is it a little bit different because you will be starting over in China?
It looks very, very similar. So typically, Duke offers a few optional prompts for smaller essay segments. So some of the ones recently have been an identity prompt. If there's something about who you are as a person or your experiences that shaped your perspective, tell us about that. Last year, there was an ethics in AI prompt that was really interesting to read those responses to. So Duke kind of has this select menu of those optional prompts for the short essays. Duke Quinshan has a required short essay that is essentially like, why Duke Quinshan? Why China? What would you bring to our university and what would you be really excited about to experience at our university? And then there are just some more open-ended supplements like, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? So either way that they apply, they can choose to use that anything else to answer the same types of things or talk about the same types of things as Duke University's prompts. So there can be a little bit of differences here and there, but I would say about 65% of the applications I read in a given year are submitted through Duke. And they're basically the classic Duke application, just with that additional element of I'm reviewing that through the lens of are they a good fit for Duke Kunshan University? And there are some ways in which I think we're looking for exactly the same things as Duke University. And there are a few elements where we're looking for, a bit of that adventurousness, for example, and um, an appetite for challenges.
Okay, that's really good to know. Now, in terms of, you know, with the Common App, with the personal essay in the Common App, then you have your supplementals or the shorter essays. Sometimes students and families think that they're very similar in how you answer them. But is that true? And what advice would you give to students when with what you're looking for in their personal essay compared to the supplementals? How should they kind of go about each one to give them the best chance of finding out who they are as a person, if they are a good fit for Duke Kunshan University?
That's a really good question. And I can answer from my personal preferences as an experienced reviewer. I've been reviewing these applications for about 9 years now. But we have other reviewers on the team who may have slightly different preferences as well. So there are a lot of different ways to look at it. For me personally, when I'm reading that primary common app essay, the long one, I'm looking for a story in most cases. I'm looking for this applicant to give me some insight into their personality or what really matters to them or what experiences in their past have really shaped them or even their creative writing talent, if that's something that they are really good at and would like to show off. I don't actually need to see anything about our specific university in that primary essay necessarily. I'm just looking for that glimpse into who are you? What's your story? And then when it comes to the smaller supplement that asks, why Duke Kunshan? What qualities would you bring and what would you be seeking from us? That's where I'm really looking for them to tell us about that match. That's where I'm looking for them to show that they do have some knowledge and understanding of who we are as a university, that they've done their homework a little bit, so to speak, and then give me a glimpse of how they could see themselves participating on campus. Bottom line for that one for me is please write it yourself. This is the area in which I feel like I'm seeing the large language models showing up more in recent years, where sometimes I see perfect regurgitations of our website in that space, but it just doesn't come across as genuine. Versus in the main essay, I feel like I'm still seeing a lot of true reflections of who students are and what they're trying to tell us. So, as a very, very bottom baseline, my recommendation for those university specific supplements is just write it from the heart. It's okay if you have a grammar mistake or a spelling error here or there. I mean, ideally check those. But I would rather see something that's real and true in that space and slightly imperfect than perfection from ChatGPT.
Yeah, you make several good points there. In terms of your with the personal essay, it's about your story, who you are, where you came from, where you're going, what you've been through, and your values, your beliefs, your passions. And then with the supplementals, you do need to do your homework, but at the same time, you need to still make sure that you're putting yourself, your own authentic voice in there. And we're kind of seeing the same thing in terms of students trying to use ChatGPT or like the large language models to give them the best shot. But when you're reading thousands of applications, you know within the first 10, 15 seconds if it's coming from a 17-year-old compared to a, you know, AI. So that's really good advice. And for any students and families thinking about that, please consider this and make sure that it's your own story. That's great. Now, in terms of, are there any interviews that are involved with either Duke or Duke Quenshawn, whether it's an alumni interview or a video supplement? Are they part of the application? And if so, are they how important are they?
Yeah, so we do offer interviews to select applicants. And we choose who we invite to interview for different reasons. And so it's not necessarily a good sign or a bad sign if you have a student and invited to interview for Duke Kunshan University. Um, but we have really gained a strong reputation for doing interviews that are conversational and engaging and leave the student feeling better than when they first opened up that Zoom. Much more relaxed and less nervous. So we certainly encourage anyone who's invited to join us for an interview. Currently, we're only doing them with with staff members. So no alumni interviews yet for us. Duke University also does some interviews, and I'm not sure. I believe they may be leveraging alumni for those, I think. Um, but yeah, it can be such a benefit. Again, when we're seeing just the black and whites of a common application out of many common applications, a really good one will give us that sense of personality and sense of story from the different elements, but it takes it to a whole nother level when we actually get 20 or 30 minutes to chat back and forth like this and, see the excitement and the passion on a student's face when they get talking about something that's really meaningful for them. And it helps us get invested in them as well. Um, every year we wind up being cheerleaders for the ones that resonate with us the most, And every year we sometimes get our heart broken if a student that we were cheering for ultimately chooses a different university. But enough of them wind up at Duke Kunshan that we get to see them like really thrive and have that honestly incredible experience above and beyond their expectations for what university life was going to be like. And that is just so gratifying.
That's so great. So, what advice would you give to a student who is offered the interview? Because I would suspect that a lot of students would get very nervous going into that. What advice would you give to students in terms of not what to expect, but kind of best to prepare or kind of know going in? Because you mentioned, you want to see their excitement, but it has to be authentic. So, anything that you could provide may help our listeners.
Yeah. For the first, I guess, do know the basics of the university that you're interviewing for. We completely understand that some of our interviewees will have primarily been applying to Duke and checked the box on a whim and then gotten invited to interview. And suddenly this is kind of newer in their exploration process than the traditional trajectory when they're making their shortlist and making their applications in the fall. So we recognize that we are not trying to trip anyone up at all, but knowing the basics of, how much time you'd spend studying in China versus the US, knowing kind of where in the world these campuses are, having taken a look at the majors that we offer, for example. So, interviewing with me and saying you can't wait to do such and such major at our university that we don't actually offer. That can be a little bit awkward on both sides. So, yeah, there's kind of like that bare minimum of homework to do to at least get the general idea. um, have some questions jotted down to ask us because we do actually give a little bit of time at the end for the interviewee to ask us a thing or two about DKU. But other than that, um, it's hard to tell them, like, don't be nervous. Of course, some of you guys are going to be nervous, and that's completely okay. We're quite experienced at doing our best to bring down those nerves a little bit to let you know that this is just a conversation and we're just so excited to meet you and to learn more about you.
Such good advice. So, for any listeners out there that are thinking about applying, the interview is not supposed to be nervous, even though we understand it may be for some, but they're trying to find out who you are as a person, but you still need to do your research. So, please come with some questions. That's really good. Now, let's move on to the cost because when people think about going to an American university, it can be quite expensive, especially for some international students. What is the cost, and is there any financial aid, access, or scholarships for Duke Kunshan University?
Yes. So, in this, you know, whole universe of American style university costs, there's what we call the sticker price, the full price if you were to pay absolutely everything. And then there is the average cost. after factoring in things like need-based financial aid, merit scholarships, and so on. So the full cost currently would be about 70,000 US dollars per year for tuition and approximately $10,000 on top of that for living costs. But most of our students are not paying those figures at all. Most of our students cannot afford to pay anything even close to $70,000, $80,000 a year. So, um, at this point in time, I think it's quite possible that all of our international students are getting reduced tuition through scholarships and financial aid. It's over 80% are getting those reductions. And I think it's been 100% for at least the last 3 years. So for need-based financial assistance, we do that on a need-aware basis. And as long as your students apply for financial aid when they're making their application, if they get accepted, we will not ask them to pay any more than their family has demonstrated they can pay. So it's kind of a pay what you can basis for tuition. For those who do not need or don't apply for financial aid, they are automatically considered for merit scholarships. And we tend to offer pretty generous merit scholarships compared to comparable 4-year private nonprofit universities like this, like Duke caliber. And so um, it's really, really a great thing that they can apply for free on the Common App, submit that financial aid application, and then just see if they get accepted and what kind of package comes along with that. Um, it's also worth pointing out that the cost of living outside of tuition is about $15,000 less per year than what they would spend at the average 4-year private nonprofit university in the United States. It's a huge difference. And even though our students are really enjoying the dorms at DKU that are so new and so fresh and clean and so well designed, they gripe at us quite a bit when they have that semester at Duke and they stay in dorms that are a little bit older and a little bit more creaky and just just not as nice. So even though they're spending so much less on it, the value that they're getting in return is really high on campus in China. We do offer 100% tuition scholarships for those who need it. So our financial aid goes all the way up to 100%. And then we typically offer 3 full ride scholarships per year. Those do tend to be pretty competitive. They go to some superstars from all over the world. But for those students, they get not just the cost of tuition covered, but also the cost of living.
Okay, so that's really good to know. So you do offer financial aid and you do offer scholarships. And for those full tuition and full scholarships that you offer, they are very competitive, but they are out there. Now, for a student that may be trying to go for that full scholarship, what goes into that? Is it similar to the actual application where it goes with your marks, it goes with your extracurriculars? Does it go with the impact that you've made on your community? If a student is, and I don't want to say that they should be trying just to do these things for scholarships. They should be doing it because they actually generally want to make an impact on their community or, help in whatever way they can. But what types of students stand out for those top scholarships?
Yeah. So Um, just to make the distinction between the 100% tuition scholarships, where they would still be affording the cost of living on their own, there's nothing extra to do. Just submitting that Common App and submitting the financial aid application is all they need to do to get considered for 100% tuition coverage. And then I think you would be referring to the 3 full ride scholarships that also include the cost of living. There is one additional step for those, And it's kind of just a little bit of a letter or a supplementary email explaining why they would like to be considered for that full ride scholarship. So there is that one extra step that we ask those who are applying for, we call it the Global Leaders Scholarship. Now, in terms of what we look for in applications that are competitive for those, I think you're right on target. It really comes through sometimes when someone has been making an impact in their community because they just genuinely care and they've taken the time and the effort to see a problem and work toward making it better. And what that looks like in Kenya can be really different from what that looks like in Brazil, can be really different from what that looks like in Afghanistan. So, there's no one size fits all, you know, standout type of student in in the sense of the needs of the different places can be so different. The opportunities that these students are exposed to can be so different. Um, and it's really kind of fun going through the committee process of comparing apples to oranges to bananas in that sense. But they just, they really care. They really put forth the effort, um, and, and try and uplift others.
So that's really good to know. So trying to uplift others, there's no one secret formula, but it's also authentic. You're doing it for reasons that you believe in. Thank you for that. What would you say is the biggest myth about DKU, and what would something students are surprised after they start?
The biggest myth about DKU. There are definitely some myths swirling around about why DKU exists in the first place. Um, I think I think I heard once the term like it's just a cash cow for Duke. Um, but we are giving out much more in financial assistance to our students than we are taking in. So it definitely does not work that way. The cash flow is not working like that. Um, it really is a nonprofit university that is delivering an elite caliber of education to its students, and doing quite a lot to make sure that we are providing financial support for students who, in many cases, would not get this type of opportunity anywhere else to bring them together and create that shared experience and that shared, again, kind of like uplifting opportunities together. Um, what other myths are going around? There's not necessarily a myth exactly, but something I've noticed over time is it's just a different lifestyle than our students would have if they were primarily looking at universities in North America, in the United States especially, or in Canada. And so in the US, I noticed that university life can be very much central to campus. Students will grill me to the ends of the earth over how good is the cafeteria food and what foods does it offer, for example, in the US, because they're envisioning themselves not eating a lot else for the next 4 years of their lives. But in China, there there are the eateries on campus, but there's also this revolving door of deliveries, kind of like if you can imagine if an entire dinner from DoorDash cost only about $4, you'd probably order it a lot like I did when I lived in China. Um, and then again, travel is so affordable and so convenient. They're really going places and they have 3-day weekends and multiple holiday breaks throughout the year. So there's time to go take group trips with their friends and explore different places together. And then when they come to Duke in the United States, it's definitely an adjustment to being somewhere where if you don't own and drive a car, you're just not getting around and seeing as many new places as they're accustomed to. So again, I like to say best of both worlds. It's a totally different lifestyle in China, and I think that surprises and delights our students. And then they still get to come to the US and have some of that more classic, traditional American experience with the college sports and, the marching band and all the rest.
Yeah, and that kind of transitions me perfectly into the next one. With the American colleges and universities, sports and the extracurriculars are a huge thing. Are they a huge thing at DKU?
Yes, they are. Um, I think we're up to 7 different sports where we have varsity teams that travel and compete against other universities, primarily in China, and then we have many more, athletics that are just, like, club sports or intramurals for fun, or athletics off campus, and then about 70 different clubs and student-led organizations in total. So there's a very robust student life outside of the classroom on campus. And then again, since it's so fluid to go back and forth between our campus, the city of Kunshan, and then the larger cities nearby of Shanghai and Suzhou, um, that our students are just having this really multifaceted, fluid, mobile experience in in a way that kind of brings campus together with the local community and the needs of the local community. So they'll often be volunteering as well, like helping teach English to the nearby school kids or shadowing surgeons in the nearby hospitals, just whatever it is that suits their own interests in terms of getting involved locally and forming those bonds with the community around them.
Sounds so interesting. And as you were mentioning, it's so many opportunities for students to get involved. So it's not just all academics at Duke Kunshan University. There is a lot of clubs, there's a lot of sports, and definitely a lot of travel involved, whether it's in the city or nearby. So that's really good for students to know. If you were going to just closing, I have two more questions. If you're going to give a piece of advice to a student either hoping to attend DKU, is already being admitted and ready to come on campus, what would it be?
So, in the stage where a student is starting to prepare their application or think about applying to Duke Kunshan University, we have virtual events that can really help you maximize that application. There's a virtual info session led by staff members that can give you the overview of what the university is like. There's a virtual campus visit where you can meet a current student and ask them questions about what their life there is like. And importantly, we offer a few application advice workshops with our interim dean of international admissions, where he's completely transparent about what we look for in each section of the Common App in a standout application. So we're not very secretive about what we look for and how to stand out. If you take 1 to 3 of those as you're making your application, you will be so well prepared to move forward with confidence that you know what we're looking for, that you're making good choices in your application and reflecting your best match self. On the other end, if you are admitted to Duke Kunshan University and you're trying to figure out if this is somewhere that you actually want to commit and attend, we enroll a whole array of similar types of info sessions and opportunities to connect with current students. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my best piece of advice is take the leap. Um, this is probably the number one best time in your entire life to move to another country, have an immediate built in group of friends in that country, to just move around untethered and explore and experience new things. And if that's the direction that your heart is calling you, if your heart is calling for adventure, then it's just to kind of take that step forward to be brave. Um, I met last August with about 8 of our current students to just sit down with them for breakfast or coffee individually, just one-on-one and be like, "How's it going?" And my heart was so warmed because at least 3 of them at different points just said, "Lindsay, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for helping me be brave to take that leap, to get on that plane and come to China because now I feel like the world is my oyster. I feel like I had this more narrow tunnel visioned idea of my future back when I was in high school. And now the experience I'm having here at Duke Kunshan is really showing me that I can do so much more and that I don't have the same boundaries and borders as I used to think I did. And it's just opened up my world completely. So it's working. This whole thing that we had envisioned when we started DKU, which was under 10 years ago, for the undergrad program, it really is working.
And that's so true. Once students generally go and they travel, it opens up so not only so many new doors, but also just the different experiences open their mind to so many more opportunities, and what you thought was possible, it just gets blown away with all these, new insights and passions and experiences. So that's really good to know. Thank you for that. Is there anything that you would like to add that may have not come up in our conversation, or you wish I would have asked?
Yes, I would like to touch on our graduation outcomes because for the first few years that we opened this university, one question that we kept getting was, will the world value and recognize the Duke degree held by graduates of Duke Kunshan University just as highly as they would from someone that holds it that spent all 4 years at Duke in North Carolina? And we believed that the answer would be yes. But now that we've graduated 4 classes, we have abundant evidence that the answer is yes. The world is giving us a resounding yes. We're graduating classes where 80% are getting accepted to US top 10 and Ivy League grad schools, and often 90% to, if you include global elites like Oxford and Cambridge, including like Schwartzman scholars, Rhodes scholars, Tsinghua, Yunqing scholars. Um, and then in terms of those who are starting their careers, they're getting offers from some really big names that you would recognize in all kinds of different sectors. So when it comes to, how will this prepare me to succeed in the future? I think there's, the obvious cross-cultural soft skills that we can talk about from this incredibly diverse environment, but having that Duke degree as well as the Duke Kunshan degree, understanding some of the nuances of the top 2 economies in the world, and then moving forward with such an influential diploma and access to Duke's alumni network as well is really setting them up for tremendous success. So I know, again, it can be scary to take that leap and move so far to the other side of the world, but those who are doing it are really setting themselves up for incredible success in a future that feels more uncertain, but they're prepared.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So, for those students that are thinking about Duke Kunshan University, it still holds the weight of the Duke degree, but in some ways a little bit more because of the experiences of living in China, having building all those soft skills, those experiences, especially if you want to go, whether it's on to grad school and or you start right away in the career. It definitely is worth the value. So, thank you for that so much. Lindsay, this has been so great learning all about Duke Kunshan University and all the experiences that students can have there. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you so much. And thank you to your students. Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Top Shelf EDU, your inside look at the university experience. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone exploring their path to higher education. We'll be back with more insights, stories, and advice to help you navigate your journey. See you next time.